We're now joined by Daniel Harris, who was also party to the performance of Manchester United in particular and a 2-0 defeat at the Emirates. Daniel, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Coming down from the high of the darts last night, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, the darts was absolutely great to see. I've interviewed Peter Wright a bunch of times, and there's no one on the circuit who works harder and wants it more. And I think, like most people, thought that he was never quite going to get there, that although he's a brilliant player, his finishing has always been excellent, but the scoring was never going to quite be enough to beat the best players on the biggest stage. But he was amazing last night. And what's really interesting about Peter Wright is most sportsmen, the way you see them perform on the pitch, on the stage, in the ring, is a reflection of their personality. It's just an extension of who they are. Whereas Peter Wright is the opposite. He's a really quiet, unassuming bloke. And what you see on stage is an alter ego. Well, I think what he said to me was that's the person he'd like to be. And we saw last night the kind of person that Peter Wright is, who's able to deliver under the most intense pressure and beat a genius like Michael van Gerwen to win the trophy that we thought he would never win. So, yeah, I'm well chuffed for Peter Wright.
So what about these alter egos playing for Man United at the moment?
Well, that's one way of describing them. I can think of some other ways of describing them. I think that there are lots of different ways of looking at how United played last night. And one just really simple way is a midfield of Matic, Fred and Lingard is not going to beat anyone, almost. and you could just leave it right there. Like, United were away to Arsenal. That was the midfield. Of course United got beat. Why would they not get beat with that midfield? But obviously there are other ways of looking at it as well. As in, Arsenal tried harder. I mean, I'm sure that Arsenal fans will say, no, Arsenal are brilliant and Arteta's done this and Arteta's done that in the space of 2 weeks and he's a brilliant manager and all the rest of it. And I'm sure Arteta has got Arsenal playing, but to me, the major difference in that first half, which was when the game was decided, was not a difference of quality. It was Arsenal were first to every loose ball and they played with greater intensity and they played with greater conviction. And that is to do with the manager, but it's not really to do with coaching. It's to do with, I mean, I guess there are elements that you would hope that the coach would inspire the players, but it's also just to do with what comes from inside. And if you're a professional footballer, then you should always be trying hard. And we saw that Arsenal did that. And to get run off the pitch by Arsenal, to get run off the pitch by a midfield that involves Granit Xhaka and Mesut Ozil is embarrassing for United. And that was, to me, was the major difference, as I said, because United actually started the game quite well, the first 8 minutes. Then Arsenal scored with their first attack. And after that, United got discouraged and they didn't have the vim and the vigour to hang in the game when Arsenal had their little moments. And they didn't have the moxie to play hard, aggressive football. And so Arsenal's second goal was deserved. And after that, United didn't have the quality to do anything about it. But the major difference was that difference in effort and application, not in skill and ability. Well,
ultimately, then you kind of have to blame Solskjaer for that because, as you said, that midfield last night was bang average. But if you're talking about a lack of application and effort in advance of some really, really shoddy performances as well since they beat Man City, that the book kind of has to stop at the manager there, does it not? And where is he going with the Pogba situation? We obviously are hearing contrary things as well coming from that camp.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that you have to blame Solskjaer. You have to allocate him some of the blame, but there's an absolute shitload of blame, and there's plenty to go around and no need to be sparing. So I wouldn't say it was just his fault, but I think one of the things that's starting to be disappointing about Solskjaer is that he's showing a lot of signs of weakness when he doesn't have to. So there are players that playing for United yesterday, he didn't have a lot of options in every position, but players like Luke Shaw, players like Jesse Lingard, he didn't have to play them, and they're going to end up costing him his job. And when you watch United play badly, you wonder what is going to be the consequence of that performance for those players. And the answer generally appears to be there isn't one, in that Brandon Williams might start against Wolves in the Cup instead of Luke Shaw, who was awful last night, but the likelihood is that Shaw will be back for the next league game. Lingard will maybe miss the next game, and again, he'll be back. And what really Solskjaer should be doing is he should be consigning some players to the bench until such time as he has no option but to use them. because there are other players he could play who are playing slightly better than they are. And there might be situations, for example, Williams had a couple of dodgy games, so Solskjaer took him out. And that was fair enough, but he was excellent against Burnley, and he should have had another game in his legs to be able to play last night, because there was no particular indication that Luke Shaw was going to come in and be a massive upgrade. Similarly, I mean, you're kind of moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic, obviously, but Andreas Pereira has played quite well recently. There was no need to play Matic or Lingard ahead of him, because I felt like he'd earned the right to stay in the team. And we know what happens when Matic plays, because we've seen it over and over again. And nothing is going to change. He's not suddenly going to become athletic. He's not suddenly going to become a brilliant passer of the ball. He's not suddenly going to be someone who can start dictating games and slowing down the pace. He will slow down his own pace, but it won't have any effect on what goes on around him. And ultimately, Solskjaer's weakness will also extends to the way that he deals with the board, in that he needs to probably stop towing the party line and say what he needs. McTominay is injured probably for 2 months. Who knows whether we're ever going to see Pogba play for United again. And that being the case, he needs midfield players. And he needs to make it very clear that he needs midfield players, because it's no longer at the point where he's protecting the players that he has by saying that he doesn't need midfield players, because it just puts him in a ludicrous position of trying to justify the unjustifiable.
Yeah, the Pogba situation, obviously, it's I suppose it'd be a bit of a joke if it weren't so serious for Solskjaer, but he had that little bit of a grin when he was asked about it yesterday, and revealed that he needs a foot operation.
Yeah, I mean, the Pogba situation, like we're all adults, we can all see that something looks slightly sus about it, but unless I have some evidence that there is something sus about it, then the notion that you see floated on the internet, and by not just on the internet, but by writers, I think, as well, that he doesn't want to play for United anymore. That seems, I'm sure he wants to leave, but in order to believe that not only does he want to leave, but he would rather not play at all than play for United, I would require some evidence for that. So I'm not going to assume that that's the case, but the fact that United have been without him for the whole season just indicates to me how ridiculous it was that Solskjaer wasn't given money to strengthen the midfield. And also the mistake that I think he made, and I've said this on here, said it even before United signed Harry Maguire, but spending midfield money on Harry Maguire, who has been at best okay, and for me something of a disappointment in that we were told, and I mean, I guess when I say his reputation, his PR tells us that he's a threat from attacking set pieces, that he's great at bringing the ball forward and building attacks, and that he's a leader. I've not seen any evidence of this whatsoever.
What's your rating out of 10 for him so far this season, then?
4 or 5.
Wow.
Not any more than that. United haven't conceded that many chances and that many goals, and I guess he's part of that. But they've conceded so many goals at key moments that you can't really give him a ranking any higher than that, because he was bought to be that person that stops that from happening. And the good defenders that I've seen play for United, when United have been under pressure, they would stop United conceding goals more or less on their own. And the constant conceding of goals from set pieces, not every goal that United concede from a set piece is Harry Maguire's fault, but he's now the captain of the team. He's the leader of the back four. He should be the person that gets them organised in training and then on the pitch that stops Alexandre Lacazette running across to the front post and getting a free header. And Lacazette, I don't think Lacazette was his man, but he should be watching to make sure that someone is with Lacazette to stop that from happening, because that was miserable, that second goal that Arsenal scored last night.
Yeah, well,
and Harry Maguire was there to stop that miserable stuff from occurring.
The whole box was absolutely full of players, and none of them decided to go with him. But just on Arsenal, you look at the energy they had put into that performance, and Mesut Ozil as well was absolutely outstanding. What I saw of him in the game. Is this going to be sustained under Arteta, or is it kind of the bounce factor that David Moyes maybe is enjoying? Where can Arsenal go this season under Arteta?
I think that Arsenal it shouldn't really be about where can Arsenal go under Arteta. I think what Arteta needs to do is he needs to find the style that suits the best players that he has. He has to decide which players he wants to keep and which players he wants to get rid of. And he needs to integrate the young players that he thinks are going to be good enough to play for him next season. They're not going to finish in the top 4. So it's not really about where they can end up, but about do they finish the season in a position of hope? Are they better off then than they are now? When I look at the United side and the Arsenal side, I actually think that the Arsenal side needs quite a lot more work. If United signed 2 midfield players, you'd see quite a good team. Arsenal need quite a lot more than that. They need some defenders, they need some midfield players, and they need to work out what the best way is of configuring their attack, because I think Aubameyang on the left, Lacazette in the middle, that's probably not something that's going to get them where they want to be in the long term. So it's funny with Arteta, because people seem to be very confident that he is some kind of savant without a great deal of evidence beyond the fact that Pep Guardiola thinks he's good. And admittedly, I mean, we'd all love that on our CV, but we don't know very much about him, so it's really difficult to evaluate the kind of style of coach that he is, because, yeah, he's definitely got the players playing for him currently, but whether that sustains remains to be seen. And what he's also going to need, probably more important than anything, is going to need an eye for a player. He's going to need to pick players that would improve Arsenal, and he's not going to have the exchequer or the pull that Manchester City have. So he's shopping in a slightly different market now. And in the end, because the squad that he has isn't that good, it's going to be that, like, does he let the right players go, and does he bring the right players in, that's going to define how far he can take Arsenal.
Thanks for your time, Daniel.
No worries.